listeners, welcome back to Dethroning Your Inner Critic. I'm Joanna Kleinman, founder of the Mind Method Academy, and I am excited to talk about today's topic because it's completely transformed the way I understand growth and transformation and what it actually means to be free. So most people believe that if they want a better life, they need to become a better version of themselves. So they need to change their thoughts or improve their mindset or overcome their limitations, fix what's wrong, get to the next goal. But I want you to consider that what if true freedom is not found in becoming a better version of yourself? So what if it comes from actually questioning the very self that you've been trying to improve in the first place? So today we're going to explore one of the most important questions you can ask, which is, who am I really? And the answer might change everything. So I've spent most of my life trying to understand the human mind. Really, I began this inquiry very young. By the time I was 13 years old, I didn't know exactly what form my work would take, but I knew one thing was absolutely certain, that I wanted to help people see themselves differently so they could have a different experience of their lives. And I was fascinated by what makes us who we are and why some people seem trapped in suffering while others find peace, and why we keep repeating the same patterns even when we desperately want change, and why we can work so hard to create a better life and still feel stuck inside the same fears, the same doubts, the same limitations. So I wanted to understand what actually creates transformation, not temporary change, but a fundamental shift in the way a person experiences themselves and their life. So even back then at 13, I sensed that peace and freedom and fulfillment were really not as far away as they seemed to many people. But they're always just out of reach. And I felt that way too. I felt like it was just out of reach. And I wanted to understand why. So everything that I've done from that point was really part of that inquiry. So the self-development programs that I attended, and then subsequently the degrees that I earned and the conversations that I had and the work that I did with clients. And underneath it all was this deep desire to understand how to change our thoughts and beliefs and how to help other people do the same. Because a long time ago, I believed that was the key. I don't believe that anymore, but I thought, well, changing your thoughts and your beliefs. You know, if you could change your thoughts and beliefs, you could change your life. I mean, even Wayne Dyer said so, right? So, of course, there's some truth to that, okay? Your thoughts absolutely shape your experience of your life. We can all agree on that. The way you think determines so much of what you feel and what you believe is possible, and what you reach for, and what you avoid, and what you tolerate, and what you create. Absolutely. But there's something missing in that statement. If you change your thoughts, you change your life. Because when you're trying to change your thoughts, or you're not believing your thoughts, or you're trying to think more positively, or you're trying to believe in a different future, and you're still doing all of that from the level of the mind cannot take you all the way to freedom. Because if you're doing it from the level of your mind, basically, you still believe you are your mind. So the deepest question is not, how do I change my thoughts? The deepest question is, who am I? Now, this is a question, you know, even if you're hearing that question, you might think, well, this is my name and this is how old I am and this is where I live and this is what I do for a living and this is how many kids I have and this is my spouse, right? But most of us believe that who we are is our personality. It is our thoughts. It is our beliefs. It is our values, our emotions, our desires, our history, our preferences, our fears, our wounds, our accomplishments, our roles. And we have this idea of ourselves, and we believe that idea is who we are. Okay. But I want you to consider, what if who you think you are is really not at all who you are? What if who you think you are is actually a concept that your mind created, like a mental image, a story, an identity structure? So really who we consider ourselves to be is a collection of conclusions we've formed about ourselves and other people and life based on everything that we've experienced. And here's the wildest part. The you that you think you are is nowhere even close to how someone else experiences you. So your best friend, your spouse, your children, they have entirely different versions of you in their mind. Your parents have a different version of you. If you could somehow jump inside their minds and see yourself through their perception, you would probably say, who the hell is this stranger in my body? Because their version of you would not match the version of you that lives inside your own mind. And this shows us something so important, that the identity that you're attached to, the one you defend and criticize and improve and compare and try to fix, is not some absolute truth. It's a perception. It's a concept. It's a mental construct. And the only way to begin discovering who you truly are is to deeply inquire into who you are not. Because we carry so many hidden assumptions about who and what we really are. So we assume, this is just how I am. This is what I'm capable of. This is what I deserve. This is what's possible for someone like me. But what if those assumptions are not truth? What if they are just the voice of your inner critic identity? What if they are the old conclusions that were formed by a mind whose one and only job is to protect you from pain, get your life to look a particular way so that you can feel a particular way? So what if the path to peace, to joy, to freedom, to becoming the highest version of yourself is not about becoming a better version of that identity that you created? What if it's really beginning to see that you are not that identity at all? So we need to talk about this, because your life is not simply a reflection of your circumstances. Your life is actually a reflection of that old identity. And most people don't understand that. Most people believe if they can change the circumstances happening outside of them, they'll finally experience something different inside of them. So they try to change the circumstances. And many times they do. They lose the weight, they leave the relationship, they start the business, they write the book, they make more money, they move to a new city, they have a baby, they get married, they get divorced, right? They achieve the goal they've been chasing for years. And for a while, it does feel like something has changed, okay? But then something strange happens, right? Because wherever you go, there you are. So the same fears return. They've just landed on a different circumstance. The same insecurities appear. The same struggles happen in a different form. The same emotional patterns resurface. The same suffering just finds a new costume. And people wonder, why is this happening again? How did I all of a sudden gain all that weight back? Why am I having the same relationship problems with a totally different person? Why do I still feel inadequate after achieving everything I thought would make me feel successful? Why do I still feel this way even though my life looks completely different? And that is because your outer life is always reflecting your inner identity. And until that identity changes, until you no longer merge with the old identity that started forming so long ago, your circumstances alone are never going to create lasting transformation. So this is why I often say that people don't experience their lives, they experience themselves. They experience who they believe themselves to be. And when we begin asking the question, who am I? That's when something fascinating starts to happen. So that's when we begin to discover that almost every area of our lives is organized around who we've mistaken ourselves to be. Right? That's why I created the mind method. That old identity, it's not wrong, it's not bad. It's just conditioned. It's a psychological self that was formed through your past. Okay? So let's just start with something simple right now. I want you to notice your thoughts right now, not the content of your thoughts. Just notice that thoughts are appearing. And notice they come and notice they go. Notice the thought arrives, stays for a moment, it disappears. But there's something underneath that thought. There's something that's aware of that thought. There's something that's watching that thought come and go. And when you start to notice the noticer, that's when everything changes. Because if a thought can be observed, then the thought can't be what you are. The thought is it's an object you experience. You're the one that's aware of that thought. The same thing is true with emotions. You feel sadness, you feel fear, you feel excitement, you feel anger. The feelings move through your experience. Sometimes they stay for a few minutes. Sometimes they stay for a few days. Sometimes they stay for years. Okay. But even then, there's something aware of the feeling. There's a feeling, and then there is the knowing of the feeling. The awareness comes before the emotion, which means the emotion cannot be what you fundamentally are. The same question applies to beliefs. You have beliefs about yourself. You have beliefs about your spouse, about money, about your success, about what's possible. But if you've lived long enough, you've watched your beliefs change. Beliefs you once held as absolute truth are beliefs you no longer hold today. And yet something remained present through all of those changes. Something witnessed the old belief and something now witnesses the new belief. The awareness was there before the belief appeared, and it remains after the belief changes. So perhaps you're not your beliefs either. And then we come to something even deeper. And that is your personality. And most people never question this one. They just assume this is who I am. I'm introverted, I'm outgoing, I'm sensitive, I'm anxious, I'm ambitious, I'm a people pleaser, I'm independent, I'm strong, I'm insecure. But you can observe all those qualities. You can notice your reactions, you can notice your tendencies, you can notice your habits, you can notice your preferences and your behaviors. So that means there's the personality, and then there's the awareness of the personality. The awareness comes prior. The awareness is already present before any label is applied. So this begins to reveal something extraordinary. And that is this me, this I, may not be what we think it is. Because every place we've looked, thoughts, emotions, beliefs, personality, we found the same thing. There's the experience, and then there's the awareness of the experience. And the awareness is always here. It doesn't come and go. It doesn't need to be created. It doesn't need to be improved. It doesn't need to become worthy. It doesn't need to become enough. The awareness just simply is. And eventually, this inquiry takes us to an even deeper assumption. And that is the assumption that there's this separate I who is aware. So most of us unconsciously believe this. We think, I'm aware of my thoughts. I'm aware of my feelings. I'm aware of my experience. But when we investigate this more carefully, can you find this I? Can you locate it? Can you point to it? Can you find this separate self that is supposedly aware of your thoughts and your feelings? Or do you simply just find awareness itself? Not an awareness that belongs to someone, not an awareness that's possessed by you, just an awareness. So just this knowing presence that's been here through every thought and every feeling and every success and every failure and every identity you've ever worn. And this is where that inquiry becomes truly transformative, because as we pull our identity out of thoughts and beliefs and emotions and roles and personalities and structures, we eventually arrive at a possibility that our mind actually struggles to comprehend. And that is the possibility that awareness is not something that you have, but that it is actually the awareness that is what you are. That we've spent our lives calling me. That me is simply a collection of experiences that appear within that me. Okay, now before your mind starts arguing with that or dismissing it or trying to figure it out, just stay curious. Okay, because what we're talking about here is not a new belief that you now have to adopt. It is an invitation for you to investigate your direct experience. Because the freedom that you've been searching for is not found in becoming that better version of that person that you think you are. It's found in discovering what remains when that person is no longer mistaken for your true identity. This is what I mean when I talk about your inner critic identity versus your authentic self. Right? So when you really start to step back and see, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my beliefs, I'm not my emotions, I'm not my personality, you start discovering that there's something that has been here all along. Right? And so this can be profoundly transformative because we've just been taught that the way life works is you spend your entire life trying to improve and fix and get to the next arrival point and strengthen and even reinvent an identity that we've never stopped to question in the first place. Okay, so if awareness is what you are, the challenge is that your mind can't fully comprehend this. Okay, so you can have thoughts about your awareness. You can think about concepts of awareness. Okay, but thought can't grasp what exists beyond thought. It's like trying to bite your own teeth or look directly into your own eyes, right? The mind reaches that limit. So beyond that point, it actually becomes an embodied experience, okay? In other words, it happens from the neck down. It doesn't happen from our mind. Our mind wants the answer. Our mind wants certainty. Our mind wants a conclusion. Our mind wants to say, oh, now I understand. Okay. But this isn't something to understand. It's actually something to experience. Right. So that is why, you look at any spiritual practice, it is going to direct you towards presence and stillness and just being. Okay. So we need to start actually living life more from the neck down. What does it feel like in your body when you honestly acknowledge, I don't actually know who I am? And live into that inquiry. What happens inside your body when you stop reaching for an answer? What happens in your body when you stop trying to define yourself or defend yourself against other people or compare yourself or think that there's something you have to do or get to before you can feel the way that you want to feel? What happens when you stop organizing your experience around maintaining that identity, right? And for a lot of people, this feels weird, okay? Because you've spent a lifetime creating this sense of certainty and known through your thoughts, through your ideas that come from your mind. Okay. So what we're looking for here is this spaciousness, this openness, this sense of relief. Because for the first time, maybe you no longer carry the burden of having to be someone. See, as that old identity loosens its grip, something really beautiful begins to happen. The mind and the body actually start to come into harmony. This does not happen overnight. But you start to notice that the war starts to end. So what I mean by the war is that most human beings live divided against themselves. One part of you wants to be safe and have everything be certain. The other part of you wants to grow and change and evolve, right? One part of you feels fear. Another part of you judges that fear. One part of you wants to rest. Another part of you says resting is lazy. One part of you wants to love deeply. Another part of you believes that's too dangerous, or I don't deserve that, or that other person doesn't deserve it, right? So our automatic self is experienced as conflict, okay? Competing agendas, competing identities, competing versions of ourselves. But when the old identity is no longer fused with all of those different parts, the one that's afraid, the one that longs for something different, those parts no longer have to fight for control. You can actually start to see those parts of yourself. You can start to allow and include those parts of yourselves because you're holding those parts of yourself in that inside of that awareness. You're not trying to fix it or change it or make it go away. You're just holding it in awareness. And that's when something in us can finally relax, not because what we've called our problems disappear, and not because our humanness goes away, right? We always have that conditioned self, but it is because we're no longer at war with that human part of ourselves. This is such an important distinction. So having awareness is not trying to get rid of your personality or change it or eliminate your emotions or trying to fix that humanness. Awareness includes it all: the fear, the joy, the sadness, the anger, the uncertainty, the brilliance, the messiness, the entire human experience. It welcomes all of it. And perhaps this is what we've been searching for all along, not better versions of ourselves, not a perfected version of ourself or our life, but a place within ourselves where nothing needs to be rejected or managed or fixed or changed, where nothing is wrong, where we can just notice what shows up and we don't have to merge with it. Because the deepest peace does not come from controlling life. It comes from recognizing the presence that has never been disturbed by life. So you don't even need a word for that awareness. It doesn't really matter. What matters is the direct experience, the recognition that beneath that old identity, that those roles, the success you've had, the failures you've had, the stories of your life, the stories of other people, there is this formless aliveness that's been here for your entire life. And it has no age and no gender and no title and no status and no history and no opinion. But it's also at the same time the deepest part of you that you could ever know, because it is what has been looking through your eyes from the very beginning. From the very beginning. So as we begin to recognize the illusion of separation starts to soften, we begin to see that life is not happening to us. It's really happening through us. We are life. And we begin to see that what we call my experience is actually part of something much larger than this individual self we've spent our lives defending and protecting, right? And really, if you got down to the core of every single one of us, we're kind of having very similar experiences, all in different forms. Okay, but we're all experiencing our version of fear and control and striving and grasping. And when you realize that there is no separateness, there's less fear, there's less grasping, there's less resistance, there's less need to prove yourself or to become someone. There's more capacity to simply be. You have more trust in just letting life flow. You have more openness. So you receive the guidance of what's next, and you take that next step. And you have more compassion for other people. You don't get so triggered when they show up in their conditioned identity. You have more peace. And it's not because the outside world changed, it's because the identity through which you are experiencing your world begins to dissolve. So where do you go from here? You don't make this another concept or a belief. You don't make it something that your inner critic is now trying to master. Okay? You just want to spend the next week being curious. Several times a day, just pause. Notice a thought. Ask yourself, if I can notice this thought, what's noticing it? Notice an emotion. What is aware of this feeling that I'm noticing? Notice a reaction. Notice a judgment. Notice a fear. Instead of just following it down the rabbit hole, become interested in the awareness that's already here before the thought or the emotion or the behavior. Not trying to get somewhere, not trying to become enlightened, not trying to transcend your human experience, just becoming curious about what has been present through every moment of your life. Because this inquiry is not about discovering something new. It's about recognizing what's always been here all along. This is perhaps the greatest paradox of all. The thing you've been searching for is the one who's been searching, right? So until the next episode, remember, you are not the voice in your head. You are not the story you've been telling yourself. You are not the identity you've spent your life trying to protect. You are the awareness in which all of it appears. When you begin to live from that place, that's when everything changes. If you're interested in going deeper in any of these concepts and ideas, there are a few ways to work with me. I do have a few spots for some individual clients. I have a community called the Mastering Your Mind community. It is a beautiful community. We meet every 2 weeks. There is a new video and reflection questions every single week. And it is a beautiful community of like-minded people. And if you are a coach, a therapist, a healer, a leader, or you're thinking about becoming one, you might want to check out the Mind Method certification program. We have a new one starting in June of 2026. So if you are listening to this podcast episode and you want to find out more information, please go to masteringyourmind.com and schedule some time to connect. Thanks for tuning in today. I'll see you on the next episode.